So we basically had a simple yet extremely challenging task. Okay, so as Renee has already said, and you heard it from Marcus before, right? So we basically had a simple yet extremely challenging task, like build the most efficient Mercedes ever, period. That's what we started with in, I think it was June 2020. So it's like, what is that now? Like 20 months ago, something like that. The goal was the most efficient Mercedes-Benz, and that means on the road. That means like a car actually driving on the road. It's a one-off, obviously. It's still a show car, but it's really more than a show car for us. That's a big point. It's more like a technology platform thing. So we're trying out a lot of things in aerodynamics, in eDrive, in EE, in all areas that we need to optimize for our cars. We have a platform here that we can test new things with and get ready for serious production applications. And obviously with this kind of car, it's sort of like, let's call it like the ultimate GT in a way, right? The ultimate GT for the electric era. And we're going to drive 1,000 kilometers on one charge. So that obviously means it's going to be a lot of like fast driving, like for example, like on the Autobahn, stuff like that. It's not going to be in city traffic. And that means we're going to drive certain speeds with the car, right? So it's not a city vehicle. And that's a lot of the reason why it looks the way it looks, because it needs to be extremely efficient at higher speeds, not just like city slower speeds. And that's why it needs to be extremely aerodynamic. And it's sort of a classic for an EV, obviously, right? That you've got it close in the front. But just to start with the first feature that is sort of jumping at everybody when you look at the car, you have those two openings on the hood, and that is our active cooling system. So in cases where we need extra cooling power, we have some shutters in the front, in those areas down there, that we can open in order to cool the car. The important thing about this is, though, that we are basically never going to do that. Like, if we really need to, that's how we're going to cool the car, but only if we really need to. In probably 95% of cases, that is just completely shut, and we have a passive cooling plate under the front, so the whole front of the car has a cooling plate under it. And we're just cooling all systems that we need to cool with air just streaming by it. And the great thing about that is that costs us nearly no drag. So that's the great thing about it. And because one of the things that we really went over and over again with the car is with stuff like the drag coefficients, there's not one magic button you can push and then it's an aerodynamic car. It's every little, like, tiniest thing, like everywhere, and every single thing needs to be perfect, and then you can make this kind of drag coefficient work. Like, I think you already heard it, like 0.17 is our drag coefficient. So that's sort of in line with some of the like greats from Mercedes-Benz, the Mercedes-Benz past, right? But now in a package that actually, this could be an actual usable car, right? This is not some sort of weird like development thing, right? It's an actual car, obviously. Maybe let's walk around here a little bit. Next up, we are going to look at this a little bit more inside too. When you look at the wheels and the hubcaps, these are obviously fully closed. That's obviously also an aerodynamics issue. With the tires, those are also extremely important. You see they're rather large, but pretty. The width is pretty small. Even the shape of that rubber is aerodynamically optimized. So not just the hubcap, but the actual shape of the rubber. Because also with aerodynamics, the aero situation around the tire is always a very tricky one, right? So if we could, it would be from like our aero colleagues, their wish would be a car without tires.
Was the tire custom made for this, or?
That's a Bridgestone tire.
Was it custom made?
Yeah, it's custom made. Yeah.
EQXX, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's only
4 of them?
it's just no. There's a bunch of them.
Okay.
This is also, it's a great point you're bringing up, because it's an actual car. It actually is allowed to drive on European roads. So that means that you go through certification with that tire. You can't just have there's a baseline certification we need to do to make sure that tire actually works on the road, right? This is something where it's just a lot harder to do something like this than if it's like an actual show car. Obviously, you just need 4 and then you're fine. But here you actually need a lot more than that. Right, maybe going further. We already talked about the mirror cam. Yeah, sure.
If that's better for aerodynamics, why doesn't every car look like that? Like, what is the trade-off?
So obviously, like there's a look to it. Obviously, with rims, that's a big design thing.
Yeah.
And now with EVs, I think more and more the world accepts that there is something to be gained from it. That's maybe even better than the design you can get from fancy wheel design, right? A lot of things about this car look the way it looks because we put efficiency first, like in everything. Like it's always, normally you always have a bunch of different criteria that you can optimize, right?
Yeah.
And for us, it's always, that's the special thing about the car. Usually you cannot do that really, but here we actually can. And that's the great thing about that. Yeah, so that also, it's important because it gives us a lot of opportunities that we need to make that happen. Yeah. If you don't have those, then you don't get the kind of drag coefficient we have with the car. Yeah. Right? Okay. Yeah, one other thing about that, we already had that briefly before. We have actual side mirrors on the car, and you could obviously ask, like people have asked before, why is it not a mirror cam? Because if you look at how mirror cams are usually done, you would probably have a little stubby camera somewhere in this area. That is something that we have looked at a lot. So it's not that we had that on the table, but it's a really complicated engineering question to answer, and it depends a lot on what kind of car you're building, what kind of speeds are you driving with the car, what you need. Also with the mirror cam, you obviously have displays in the car that you need for that, and that kind of affects your UI concept that you can do. So it gives some restrictions on what you can do in the car then, and in the end, this was just the best compromise for us. So we're really happy with the solution we found here. And yeah, and also I think it helps the overall look of the vehicle. It really, right? Yeah, so really happy with that. Maybe going to the back here. So there's also active aerodynamic features on here. This is a diffuser of the car. So it's usually when it's standing, it's just completely in, but then you can extract it and fold it down. And this is our, let's call it aero mode. So that's how the car is actually moved on. If you're driving on the Autobahn, it's going to be out like this. And that's an important feature to guide the air in the back of the vehicle, because obviously we had to have a lot of drag points to gain from that, to guide the air in the back of the vehicle. And that is also the reason for why why it has that aerodynamic shape, the whole car, right?
How much improvement does that make? How much improvement does that make in terms of drag? Or
It's sort of.
it's hard to put into.
It's correct. Like it has a significant. Let's put it like that. It has a significant improvement. But the important thing is, like I said before, it's not. Don't see it as a sort of like a magic option, right? Where it's like, if you don't have this, it's not a great aerodynamic car, but this makes it. It's one of the important steps to get you there, but it's just one of them. That's the really important point about it. Yeah, and it also looks amazingly cool. So that's another great thing about it. Yep. Okay. Moving on.
And you need this feature especially for higher speeds on the motorway or something like that.
Definitely. Yeah, so the forces that you need to overcome obviously increase exponentially with speed, and the faster we go, the more important it is to have this. Yeah, so yeah, that's an important feature. Okay, maybe one thing I'm just gonna try to show you on this. Give me a second here. Okay, so maybe we need to squeeze in a little bit. Give me yeah, it's just maybe let's go to the front, you can see it better over there. So another thing that's really important about the car is you can see that with our front window. Our Apillar is extremely smooth, right? Normally you have a crease in there, but we don't have that. And this is this is our aero simulation that shows you how the air flows around the A-pillar. And this is just another one of those important little steps that you need to take to make the car as aerodynamically efficient as it is. And yeah, this is just an AR tool to give you an idea how that actually looks in simulation. And I'm just going to switch that over for a second here. Which one are we going to take? Okay, so this is, like I told you about the cooling, right? So this is what the simulation looks like for the closed cooling in the front. So this is the normal way we move the car, right? So there's nothing streaming into the front here in the car. And if I actually switch that over here for a second, this is how it then looks if the car is actively cooled. So air actually goes into the front through the radiator and then comes out of the bonnet. Yeah. And then we talked about aerodynamics a lot, but just to as a segue to when we go inside, we can maybe come a little bit closer here. So this is just to show you one of the parts that you can see inside. This is the damper dome. So this is where the damper of the car sits on this.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So this is like, yeah, right. This is kind of like a tricky AR feature.
It's like a live X-ray.
Yep. So that's one of our bionic mesh design parts. You're going to see that inside. There's a lot of like lightweight engineering was a big part of that vehicle, because obviously you need to be aerodynamically efficient, but you also need to be as light as possible with the car to be as efficient as possible. Yeah, and that's a big thing. So, but maybe now is a good time to just head inside and check out those parts, right?
Yeah, thank you. That was a great
Sure.
plans. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, man.
Yep. Thank you. Great job. So what do we have here? Well, clearly we have a very lovely car, but there's a few questions about this in that we're in a hotel. I'm just wondering how they get this car up here. There must be an interesting way to do it, but look at this beauty, isn't it nice? It's just so lovely, nice. Look at that. Oh man. It looks even better in reality than just the videos and pictures. It just looks so nice. Look at that sweeping line.